Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Mrinmoy Pramanik. I teach comparative Indian language and literature at the University of Calcutta. Now we will discuss about Sri Aurobindo and his poetic thought. Aurobindo was born in 1872 and he died in 1950. He was a poet, essayist, literary critic, playwright, and most significantly, a polyglot. But all these are partial introduction of Sri Aurobindo. He was a nationalist, a mystic. He was a political activist, and he was one of the greatest philosophers of modern India. He completed his primary education in England, and then he came back to India when he was only 21 age old. After returning to India, he learned Bengali, his mother tongue. Beside English and Bengali, he knew Gujarati, Sanskrit, French, and Italian. In the theory of poetry and Indian poetic thought, his future poetry is a very significant text. Some parts of this book talks about the English poems, and the later part is a manifesto of mystic poetry. He wrote several essays which put his clear vision and idea of poetry on record. His work, the future poetry, is not only a modern poetics but a discursive language of literary criticism in 20th century Indian tradition of criticism and literary philosophy. His thought on poetry also shows his role as a receiver of world literature. His mammoth knowledge on world and Indian literature reflected in his discursive writing on literary criticism and idea of poetry. Indeed, his essays are comparative by its very nature. Whatever essay we read from this future poetry, we can understand that he is taking comparative method to discuss, to put his arguments, because he read a lot about Indian and world poets, and he took all the references to establish his arguments and his ideas. Let us take the titles of his essays to understand his poetic thought, because the very title of his essays are very significant to understand the whole process of thinking on poetry of Sri Aurobindo. The first thing we would like to mention here in this discussion is mantra. The word mantra has no adequate English equivalent. The English words incantation or magic come very close to the Indian word mantra. From ancient times, the Western critics have looked upon poetry as a kind of incantation or magic. They also believed that the highest reach of poetry is attainable only when its words acquire an irresistible haunting power over the listener's or reader's mind. I unquote. In his essay on mantra, Aurobindo told that a book which recently I have read and more than once reperused with a yet unexhausted pleasure and fruitfulness, Mr. James Cousin's New Ways in English Literature, is eminently of this kind. It raises thought which goes beyond the strict limits of the author's subject and suggests the whole question of the future of poetry in the age which is coming upon us. The higher functions open to it. as yet very imperfectly fulfilled, and the part which English literature on the one side and the Indian mind and temperament on the other are likely to take in determining the new trend. The author is himself a poet, a writer of considerable force in the Irish movement, which has given contemporary English literature its two greatest poets. And the book, on every page, attracts and satisfies by its living force of style, its almost perfect measure, its delicacy of touch, its fineness and depth of observation and insight, its just sympathy and appreciation. So from this very beginning of the essay on mantra, we can understand that his whole understanding of mantra and the argument what he is going to do in this essay is based on the book about what he is talking here. And he is talking about the accomplishment of that book and the theory of poetry, what is reflected in this book, and the author's imagination about future poetry. But this poetry is not detached from the life or society, because the author himself is an Irish poet and was very much engaged with the Irish movement. So all these political, social and cultural issues are reflected or influenced the author to imagine this book of poetic theory and to imagine the future poetry. And it was very much welcoming to Sri Aurobindo. Mr. Cousins excellently says, Aurobindo commented, lies in the apprehension of a something stable behind the instability of word and deed, something that is a reflection of the fundamental passion of humanity for something beyond itself, something that is a dim shadowing of the divine urge which is prompting all creation to unfold itself and to rise out of its limitations towards its godlike possibilities. So from very limited space to unlimited possibility, Aurobindo is talking about a poetry has, though poetry has its own limitation in terms of theme, in terms of form, but in terms of appreciation, it has unlimited possibility. And that unlimited possibility, that open-ending possibility actually gives the Rashik, the Rashik or the reader a chance to taste something which is very much godly. And such poetry is actually emerged from the socio-political reality of the poet. And from this limited scope, the accompaniment of this poetry, the reading and the realization of this poetry brings the poetry in a heavenly flavor, gives the reader a godly taste. Sri Aurobindo has mastered both in Sanskrit and Latin, considered to be the language of the spirit, but in his poetry he has avoided both these classical languages and established that even the English language could be used as a vehicle of expression with a mantric value. That mantric value was very much significant in his poetic creation, and he was looking for language which will offer him the mantric value in creation of poetry. And that is why, though the concept of mantra, the philosophical understanding of poetry is very much available, very much expressed throughout the ages in Sanskrit language, but he didn't choose the Sanskrit language to write his poetry, but he chose English because he believes that poetry has that immense power to give the mantric value to the words and to the meaning. He has devised the English language by making it a medium for the lofty utterance of the spirit. He has refined and researched the English language and breathed into it the greatness and power of the so-called language of religion and God, namely Latin in the West and Sanskrit in the East. A.K. Ramabhushanam, in his article on the poetry of Sri Aurobindo, the mantra of the real, actually commented, the mantra, poetic expression of the deepest spiritual reality, is only possible when three highest intensities of poetic speech meet and become indissolubly one. A highest intensity of rhythmic movement, a highest intensity of interwoven verbal form and thought substances of style, and a highest intensity of the soul's vision of truth. So one side we can find that the rhythm is significant to get the mantra, and the interwoven structure of verbal form and the thought substance, themes, styles, all these are important. And another important thing is the reader's desire to achieve the ultimate truth, the desire of souls to achieve ultimate truth. These three cultures should be mixed with each other and it should appear as one. Then the mantric value of poetry will come out. And this mantric value of poetry signifies one poem is a successful poem, one poem is a true poem. All great poetry comes about by a unition of these three elements. It is the insufficiency of one or another which makes the inequalities in the work of even the greatest poets. And it is the failure of some one element which is the cause of their lapses, of the scoria in their work, the spots in the sun. But it is only at a certain highest level of the fused intensities that the mantra becomes possible. It is from a certain point of view, the rhythm, the poetic movement, that is of primary importance. For that is the first fundamental and indispensable element without which all the rest, whatever its other value, remains inacceptable to the muse of poetry. He further commented, this is the intensity of poetic movement out of which the greatest possibility of poetic expression arises. It is where the metrical movement remains as a base, but either enshrines and contains or is itself contained and floats in an element of greater music which exceeds it and yet brings out all its possibilities. That the music fit for the mantra makes itself audible. The musical value, the rhythmic value, to get the mantric value of poetry is very much significant in the understanding of Sri Aurobindo. Then let us talk about rhythm and movement. While Aurobindo was talking about the mantric value, which is the highest value, the highest denominator of a successful poem, of a true poem, he was talking about the rhythmic value and the movement of a poetry. Now let us talk few things about Aurobindo's understanding about rhythm and movement. In his article on rhythm and movement, he commented that rhythm is the premier necessity of poetical expression because it is the sound movement, and sound movement is very important to attract the reader, to touch the soul of the reader. And we know that in Indian poetic thought, it is always acknowledged, it is the theorists are agree with the statement that Shabda Brahma, the Shabda or word is ultimate truth. It is like Brahma. And rhythm is the premier necessity of poetical expression, because Aurobindo believes that it is the sound movement, the movement of sound, which carries on its way with the thought movement in the word, and it is the musical sound image which most helps to fill in, to extend, subtilize and deepen the thought impression or the emotional or vital impression, and to carry the sense beyond itself into a expression of the intellectually inexpressible, always the peculiar power of music. So from rhythm to movement, he talks about the significance and significant power of music, the musical value of poetry, that why a poetry should be musical. First, he talks about the rhythm, which is about the sound movement, and from that sound movement he talks about the thought movement, that this sound movement actually influences the reader's mind, and the reader's mind then starts thinking about the subject with what he or she is engaged, and this is thought movement in the word. And then the musical sound image comes, and musical sound image is very powerful to give the reader the meaning of poetry, and this is how the music has peculiar power, and the musical significance, the musical characteristic of a poetry is important. In regard to poetic style, we have to make, according to Aurobindo, for the purpose of the idea, we have in view the starting point of the mantra, precisely the same distinctions as in regard to poetic rhythm, since here too we find actually everything admitted as poetry which has some power of style and is cast into some kind of rhythmical form. But the question is, what kind of power, and in that kind, what intensity of achievement? Then Aurobindo goes into the style and substance. So first he talks about mantra, it is the philosophical truth of a poetry. Then he talks about the movement, sound movement, and then he comes into the discussion of style and substance. In his own words, his highest intensity of style and movement, which is the crest of the poetical impulse in its self-expression, the point at which the aesthetic, the vital, the intellectual elements of poetic speech pass into the spiritual, justifies itself perfectly when it is the body of a deep, high, or wide spiritual vision into which the life sense, the thought, the emotion, the appeal of beauty in the thing discovered and its expression. For all great poetic utterance is discovery, according to Aurobindo. Rise on the wave of the culminating poetic inspiration and pass into an ecstasy of sight. In the lesser poets, these moments are rare and come like brilliant accidents, angels' visits. In the greater, they are more frequent outbursts. But in the greatest, they abound because they arise from a constant faculty of poetic vision and poetic speech, which has its lesser and its greater moments, but never entirely fails these supreme masters of the expressive word. So based on the concept of style and substance, Aurobindo divided the poets into three categories: those who doesn't have much talent, those who have talent, and who has extraordinary talent. So based on style and substance, he categorizes the character, the talent of poets. Now, let us talk about national evolution of poetry. From its very beginning, when Aurobindo was talking about mantra and the Irish poets whose reference he took, he mentioned very clearly that an Irish poet was very much engaged with the Irish movement, and that movement helped him in emergence of his poetry and his poetic thought. In other side, we can compare the reference point of Irish poet with the position of Sri Aurobindo, because Sri Aurobindo also was a nationalist and he was very much engaged with political movement, the political activities, and all these experiences help him to understand the poetry, understand the life, the society, the culture, and the life beyond this material world. So there, the national value has enough significance in his understanding of poetry, in his understanding of poetry, and he talks about the national evolution of poetry. The work of the poet depends not only on himself and his age, but on the mentality of the time, of the nation to which he belongs, and the spiritual, intellectual, aesthetic tradition and environment which it creates for him. It is not that he is or need to be entirely limited or conditioned by his environment, or that he must regard himself as only a voice of the national mind or bound by some past national tradition and debarred from striking out a novel and original road of his own. In nations which are returning under difficulties to a strong self-consciousness, like the Irish or the Indians at the present moment, this kind of conscious nationalism in literature may be for some time a living idea and a powerful motive. In others, which have had a vivid collective life that has exercised a common and intimate influence on all its individuals, or in those which have cherished an acute sense of a great national culture and tradition, the more stable elements of that tradition may exert a very conscious influence on the mind of the poets. I unquote. So this is Aurobindo's very statement about the national identity, the national tradition, national heritage, national intellectuality, society, politics, and the relation of all these with poetry. So this section, such kind of thought shows that Aurobindo was not only a poet of mysticism. His poetry was not fully concentrated only on the mysticism. He had a clear upliftment of poetry from the earthly reality to the world beyond this material existence. In his understanding, the poetry actually emerged from very reality, and it gets freedom. It becomes open in world beyond this world, some kind of metaphysical world. Because when he is talking about national evolution of poetry, he actually relates poetry with the society, with the people, with the culture, with the tradition. That poetry is not an isolated creation. Poetry has its all roots within the society, within the history, within the culture, and within the intellectual tradition, because poet cannot avoid all these realities, and all these realities help poet or make poet bound to think about his own poetry to be created, to be rooted within these socio-political and cultural reality from which the poet himself has emerged. Now, beside these thoughts, the essence of poetry is also very much significant to understand Aurobindo's poetic thought. In Essence of Poetry, Aurobindo commented, "What then is the nature of poetry? Its essential law." He is talking about the nature of poetry. Till now we have discussed the philosophical truth about poetry and how poetry has been emerged, has been created, has been rooted. Now he is talking about the nature or the character of poetry. What is the highest power we can demand from it? What poetry can do, what the supreme music that the human mind reaching up and in and out to its own widest breadths, deepest depths and topmost summits can extract from this self-expressive instrument, and how out of that does there arise the possibility of its use as the mantra of the real. Not that we need spend any energy in a vain effort to define anything so profound, elusive and indefinable as the breadth of poetic creation. To take the mirrored stringed harp of Saraswati to pieces for the purpose of scientific analysis is a narrow and barren amusement. So, in his understanding, poetry has actually two ends. One end is very much rooted in reality, and another end is open beyond, open towards the metaphysical worlds, beyond the material world. And poetry has deep connection with human mind and human soul, and this is how poetry can serve its own purpose. Poetry can put its own objective in the minds of the readers. So in his understanding, the theory of poetry is a view of the rhythmic and creative self-expression to which we give that name, which is very different from any that we now hold, a sacred or hierarchic arts. Poetica only possible in days when man believed himself to be near to the gods and felt their presence in his bosom and could think he had some accents of their divine and eternal wisdom take form on the heights of his mind. The poetry of the future, if it fulfills in amplitude the promise now only there in rich hint, will kindle these 5 lamps of our being, but raise them up more on high and light with them a broader country. Many countries, indeed, now hidden from our view, will make them not any longer lamps in some limited temple of beauty, but suns in the heavens of our highest mind and illuminative of our widest as well as our inmost life. A poetry of this kind need not be at all something high and remote or beautifully and delicately intangible, or not that alone, but will make to the highest things near, close and visible, will sing greatly and beautifully of all that has been sung, all that we are from outward body to very God and self, of the finite and the infinite, the transient and the eternal, but with a new reconciling and fusing vision that will make them other to us than they have been even when yet the same. And I unquote Aurobindo's comment. So what we talked a little earlier also, that in Aurobindo's understanding, all the oppositional philosophical truth exists within a specific, within a piece of poetry, within a text of poetry. It talks about real, it talks about godly, it talks about the contemporary, it talks about eternal, it talks about things which is limited, and it reopens or opens the innumerous possibility. It talks about finite and infinite together, and this is how a philosophical ground of successful poetry can be found in poetic analysis. And now let us conclude. The Aurobindo's poetic thought is not only reflected in his poetic practice or his translation of Mahabharata or his great poetic creation Savitri, but we can find his poetic thought which is very much well organized in his different essays on the future of poetry and the essence of poetry. These two texts offers us a discursive language to analyze the poetry, and it shows the modern poetic thought which is related with one side with the Western culture, with the Western philosophy and the thought on poetry which is coming from the Western literature, and in other side its root is there in the ancient Indian culture and ancient Indian tradition, the Indian philosophy, the Upanishada, the Veda, and the philosophical thought reflected by the Sanskrit poetic theorists, the rhetoricians. We can find the study of two cultures. We can find the study of different times, the thoughts whatever have emerged in different times, we can find in Aurobindo's understanding of poetry, in Aurobindo's poetics. Aurobindo's poetics in that sense has actually a survey, a intellectual and philosophical survey of his ancestors from Indian culture and from the Western culture. And this is how we can understand the modern poetic thought and poetics of Aurobindo of this time, and which is not disconnected with the past or ancient tradition, but it is very much related, and it offers something new to the modern world. And this is and because of that, Aurobindo has very, very much significance in Indian philosophy and Indian poetics in modern times. For references, bibliography and detailed study about this module, you can find the e-content. Here mainly we have referred Aurobindo's own words to discuss our subject, but you can find in detail in e-content. Thank you.